walking in a country road, and I've been chasing after my shadow.
Welcome back to the Camino Podcast. It is episode 100. I'm Dave Whitson.
Nobody asked me my name.
We did it! 100 episodes of the Camino Podcast are now, at long last, complete. The first episodes went online nearly 10 years ago now, on December 12th, 2015. So yeah, you can impugn my output pace, but not my persistence. Looking back, it's honestly pretty amazing to see the list of people I've had the opportunity to speak with for the pod. David Gitlitz and Linda Davidson, authors of the most important book on the Camino Frances. Jack Hitt, author of Off the Road, The Inspiration for the Way. Lori Dennett, John Brierley, Johnny Walker, Rebecca Scott. Mark Kurlansky, author of The Basque History of the World. Edwin Mullins, one of the first to write in English about the French Chemins during the Camino's resurgence. Nancy Louise Fry, the great Camino anthropologist. Phil Volker and Annie O'Neill. Phil Cousineau, Guy Stagg. I mean, geez, I could keep going. And then there are all the assorted experts who have brought so much more depth to our understanding of the different routes. One of Franco's major biographers, a breeder of Aubrac cattle, a scholar of Asturian nationalism, a researcher on foie gras production. Again, I'll stop myself before I totally lose the thread. But the point is that there's just a ton of different stuff to explore in these 100 episodes. And of course, that absolutely also includes the many pilgrims who have come on to share their stories and boots-on-the-ground expertise. There was one guest that I wanted for episode 100. One obvious, essential person to join me for this august occasion. But you're going to have to stick around. I'm saving that one for the end. Trust me, though, if you've been listening to the pod for a while, you'll want to hear this too. And don't worry, it's not going to be a hardship to get to that point. This is an important episode, not simply because of the round numbers, but also because we're exploring issues related to safety and security on the Camino. The AlertCops app has emerged as an essential resource for pilgrims and other travelers in Spain, but lots of people still either don't know about it or fully understand how it works. For that reason, I wanted to go straight to the horse's mouth, to the folks at AlertCops, to learn more about this invaluable tool. And while I was on the subject of safety, I wanted to hear from Rebecca Martinez. If you're active in Camino Facebook groups, you may be familiar with Rebecca, who has taken a prominent role in raising awareness about potential hazards that pilgrims face, both at home and on the road. The overarching point that comes through across both of these conversations is that the Camino is safe. Full stop. That's the headline. But also, as safe as it is, there are some small steps we can all take to tilt the odds even more in our favor. So that's the goal, ultimately. To not scare anyone, but rather offer some practical advice to inspire even greater confidence. So here we are. It's episode 100, everyone. AlertCops, Rebecca Martinez, and a very special guest. Thanks for listening. Andrea Parraga Penalver and Juan Manuel Aragon Garcia are representatives of the AlertCops app, which originates from the Spanish Ministry of the Interior. The AlertCops app can be downloaded from the Apple and Google Play stores and is completely free to use. Well, thank you both for speaking with me about AlertCops. Maybe to get started, could you each introduce yourselves and explain what your role is and how long you've been with AlertCops?
We both work at CETSE. CETSE is a technology organization under the Spanish Ministry of the Interior, and we work alongside developers, designers, and the law enforcement agencies themselves. Of course, our goal is to develop tools and applications that make the work of these guys easier, and at the same time, we are providing them with the technical support and the infrastructure they need.
So my name is Andrea. I've only been working here for like 1 year, Juan is been like 10 years. And I'm in the same department, in the creative department, which is all the creative and communicative part of the application.
Yeah, so you're sort of the technology that links together the people out in Spain and the police. You are the connection.
Yes.
We are, yes.
So let's start with the big picture question. Pilgrims often ask in Facebook forums to each other when they're first learning about the Camino de Santiago, is the Camino safe? How do you respond to that question? Is the Camino safe?
I think so, yes. The Camino is very safe. Thousands of people from around the world walk it every year without any issues. So I think Spain is considered one of the safest countries in Europe in this regard. And the Camino routes are well maintained with strong local and police presence in most areas. And of course, as with any long journey, basic precautions should be taken. But overall, it's a peaceful and welcoming experience.
Okay, that's a helpful starting point, and that aligns with what I've always told people, so that's good to know. I know that you don't have any firm statistics, but do you have a general sense, a feeling of how often pilgrims are victims of crime? Like, is this a daily, weekly, monthly thing that something happens where a pilgrim might need to notify AlertCops about a situation?
So serious crimes in the Camino aren't common. They aren't common. The most common incidents are usually like minor thefts, or you leave a backpack and you lose it, or someone steals it. But violent crime, it's extremely uncommon in the Camino. While we don't have specific crime data by pilgrim status, law enforcement agencies monitor the route closely and they respond quickly. In fact, many areas along the Camino have dedicated patrols during the high season, so it's like really rare to have crime there.
I hear very little reporting from pilgrims about violent crime, so my impression definitely matches that. I think the most common crime offense that I hear about is, in English, we would call it indecent exposure. Often older,
Yeah.
usually men, flashing women. Do you hear a lot of those cases?
I think we don't hear a lot about those cases, but they definitely happen sometimes.
So yeah, maybe people just don't report them very much to AlertCops. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the app. That's what you do, and let's talk about the big question: why should every pilgrim install the AlertCops app on their phone? How does it work? What does it do?
Okay, it's a big question because there are lots of things to put in here. But let's say AlertCops is the official safety application from Spain's Ministry of the Interior, and it connects you directly with the Spanish police. The Spanish police, when we are talking about the Spanish police, we are talking about the Civil Guard and National Police. Two bodies here. One is more based on the countryside, and the other one is more for urban places, like a city. So the way you connect with them is through a chat service with automatic translation to several languages, not only English, but also French, Italian, and other languages. AlertCops, what it does is it lets you report incidents or request help with just a few taps. It's especially useful for sending your location in an emergency, or receiving security alerts in your area, or reporting theft, assault, lost property, or suspicious activity. And also allows you to get help even when you don't speak Spanish, because the app supports multiple languages. I think every pilgrim should install the AlertCops app because it offers a direct and reliable way to contact the Spanish security forces and tourists in case of an emergency. And I think it's one of the most useful features for pilgrims, especially because it has this service called Camino de Santiago that enhances safety along the route. You have to activate this feature. It doesn't come automatically. But if you activate the feature, pilgrims can share their location in real time with the police and receive safety alerts and get help quickly if something goes wrong. So it gives peace of mind not only to the pilgrims themselves, but also to their families.
It's really important to bear in mind that you have to activate it because it's not automatic, and that you must subscribe to a button that's called Camino de Santiago inside of the app. So in order to use the service, you have to enter the Guardian section in the app and select Add a new Guardian, click on Forces. I don't know how the translation is exactly. It's Cuerpos de Seguridad in Spanish. And then select the service you want to subscribe, in this case, Camino de Santiago. And then you click on Save. Now, from that moment on, you're sharing your position with the state security forces and corps so that in case of emergency or risk, they can assist you more effectively.
When you say that you receive security alerts, what kinds of alerts do those entail?
The alerts you receive are usually related to weather because it's the north, so maybe there's a storm. And maybe this is not like common, but if someone is missing, you can also receive an alert. So police is trying to tell you if you see this person or something related to him, just tell us. Or if a street is in bad state, and they are usually related to that. It's anything important.
Yeah, that is important. And it's something I didn't realize until I was preparing for this, that in my mind, AlertCops was something you only download in order to alert cops to a problem.
No.
But it has all of these other functions where, in the summer, unfortunately, there's increasingly this threat of wildfires. And so it can also alert you to wildfires, to flooding, to all of these potential hazards so that you can be safer.
Exactly, yes. That's what they are for.
So am I correct in saying that the advantage of going with AlertCops over calling 112 on your phone is that you are guaranteed that the language gap won't be an issue? And then B, that your location is automatically conveyed. So you don't have to try to explain where you are, that I'm on the fifth kilometer of the trail after Los Arcos. Like people know where you are.
Yes, they would just know where you are. And the language wouldn't be a barrier.
People are sometimes careful or concerned about their data, their personal information. And so you said that the moment you subscribe to Camino de Santiago, the security forces have access to your location. Does the data get used for anything else? Is it saved? What happens to that personal data?
AlertCops does not store your personal data. We were talking about that before, Andrea and me, because it's quite interesting how people are willing to share their data with any other app, like a food delivery app, for example, because you want to get a discount or whatever. But here is the police asking for it. And we take this issue very seriously. When you stop using the Guardian service, the police no longer have access to your location or store any data. Also, the registration process is very interesting because you only need to enter your phone number. You don't need to have to provide your name if you don't want to. Not ID or passport is required.
Let's say that I am on the Camino and I report something through AlertCops. What happens next?
When a pilgrim approaches to an area of the Camino de Santiago, a new button will appear in the main screen of AlertCops app, and it's labeled Camino de Santiago. By simply tapping that button, an alert will be sent to the nearest police station or civic guard post, and the chat will be initiated, okay? So the most useful part is that the officer who receives the alert also gets the pilgrim's location, as we've talked before, and the personal information that he has provided to the app. So that generally speeds up the process. And then in the chat, the pilgrim can attach photos, videos, or voice messages. And the most importantly for international tourists is that, as we said before too, the conversation can be conducted in different languages. And then after that, after you told them what happens through the chat and attach videos or photos, you may receive a phone call back or messages for more details. And if the situation is urgent, the response is immediate and they can like send a patrol there or send you a location to go to a safer place. And yeah, the goal is to make sure help reaches to the point as fast as possible, even if you're on a trail in a rural area. And that's basically the process.
Pilgrims will sometimes say, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. It doesn't feel serious enough. Like, why should I report this? It doesn't seem big enough. How would you respond to that?
We have this example. Even if you see a dog in the Camino, maybe it's a wild dog, it's okay to report it because the Camino is full of families and children, and you don't know if that dog is aggressive, for example. So everything that they have a concern about, it's good to communicate it. It's not going to bother anyone. It's best. I mean, it's really important for us to be safe in the Camino, and everything they see that it's weird or rare, even if it's something they think it's not really important, they should communicate it because it's just a message and it can help a lot. And also it's because as we talk, it's an app where you receive alerts, even if it's like there's a tree on the street. That's important too, because you might go with the car or whatever, and there might be an accident. So everything is really important in the Camino to share.
I looked into some forums, some pilgrim forums before this conversation just to see what kinds of things people were writing about AlertCops, and most of it was very positive. People feel very good about having this option available. I did see some pilgrims who discussed having technical challenges with installing AlertCops on an international phone without a Spanish phone number. Is that sort of old news? Are those technical issues resolved? Or can you sort of troubleshoot the most common challenges pilgrims have with installing AlertCops on an international phone?
We've had technical issues in the past, but they are solved, I think. And yes, you can use AlertCops with a foreign phone number. And the app is available in the App Store and Google Play. And during the registration, you can enter any international number. You just have to make sure you have internet access for the registration and to receive the verification code by message. It's very simple. If you don't get the code, you should check your spam settings. And you can also contact AlertCops at interior.es for assistance. We have a team, which is fantastic. They are available 24 hours. So they will assist you if you have any issues during the registration process.
I said this before the conversation that I sent an email to that address with very low expectations. I did not expect to hear back from you, and instead I heard back very soon. So I can vouch for how responsive people are to that email, even with issues that don't involve immediate security issues. Is there anything else that you think pilgrims should know about AlertCops that we haven't talked about already? What else would you want a pilgrim to know about this?
I would give advice to pilgrims that go through El Camino, especially to thousands of women who walk the Camino on their own every year. And if they want to have a safe, meaningful experience, we have some tips that we can give them, like they should share where they are with someone they trust. Use the AlertCops application with the Camino de Santiago service, so someone can track their location if it's needed. They should avoid walking alone before sunrise or after dark. You must trust your instincts. If someone or something feels off, you should ask for help or walk with others. And you should stay connected with the Camino community with other pilgrims or locals, because they are usually very supportive. Our main advice for everyone who's doing the Camino is you shouldn't let fear stop you, because the Camino is one of the safest and most inspiring journeys.
I just want to follow up on one of the points that you made because it's so important. Probably the most common question about pilgrim safety on the Camino comes from women walking alone and being concerned about whether
Yeah.
they will be safe. And you said, don't walk alone before the sun rises, after dark. But you're not saying don't ever walk alone. You're just saying be mindful in those particular situations.
Yes, still safe walking before sunrise or after dark, of course. But it's always better to avoid these kind of situations, not because of crime. I don't believe someone is going to do anything serious, but because of accidents, because the routes sometimes are dangerous. I'm talking about the path. So I think it's always better to avoid these kind of things, walking alone sunrise or after dark.
Yes, also you find many more pilgrims during the day on the road,
Yeah.
so that's you're not going to be exactly alone.
Yeah. Especially during the busy times on the
Yes.
Camino Frances, it's very hard to be alone.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
impossible. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for talking with me and for helping to bring this information to people about AlertCops, this free app that can make it, even if you never use AlertCops on your Camino, which maybe is the goal,
Mhm.
right? That you
Yes.
have this app on your phone that you never touch once,
Yes.
but it's there if you need it. And it's good to be prepared just for those worst case scenarios
Yes.
so that you can deal with them directly.
Yes, or just to receive alerts.
Yeah.
It's important to know if there's going to be storm or a
Wildfire.
yeah.
It's good to be prepared.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Rebecca Martinez, thank you for speaking with me. I wanted to talk with you because I don't know exactly how it happened, but you kind of just have emerged as this Camino watchdog in the Facebook groups. I see you calling attention to all kinds of different risks that pilgrims might face or encounter as they're planning their trip, as they're getting ready to go, as they're on the road. How did that happen? How did you find yourself in that position?
I think it happened gradually, to be honest. And I'll say that it does take a village. As soon as I started noticing patterns, then I was just getting very upset about it. That is one of my pet peeves, let's just say. And so scamming people, especially pilgrims who think of these communities as wholesome and that there is no kind of problem. There are just good-hearted people. And for the most part, that's the case. The vast majority, these, groups and pilgrims are helpful to each other, supportive, and that's how we want to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started noticing this, I was just incensed. And so I started telling people, how do you recognize these groups that are fake? Because helping pilgrims isn't just about the physical Camino. It's about the part before that. And these groups attract so many people who want to walk the Camino. Why don't we start there? We need to start even before the physical Camino to let people know the directions that they should be going, the Facebook groups, in order to get the good information and the support that they need.
So fueled by righteous indignation, I can get behind that. And one of the concrete ways this is manifested for you is moderating a Camino de Santiago All Routes Women 50 Plus Facebook group. What are the particular needs? I mean, I think you've just alluded to some of these, but when you think about that particular demographic, women over 50, what are the particular needs or considerations that make that kind of a group important in your mind?
First off, we are the largest demographic, it turns out, of people walking the Camino. Women who are in this age group, people might not think about that and not realize it. So what's going on? Well, women are maybe at an age where they can do something that's just for themselves. We've raised families and sent kids off to college. And now it's our time, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons women are attracted, because it's, hey, what do I do for me now?
Yeah.
What's the next thing? And, women will have questions about this age group, things that they might not feel comfortable asking in a larger mixed gender group that are specific to our experiences. So this gives them a place to land. And it gives them a place to land where they're not worried about people selling things, people asking them for donations, people who may have some self-interest. And I'm not saying that those things in terms of, yeah, you got a book, you want to sell it, that makes sense in Camino groups. But this group actually came about because of a big scam that emerged in a women's group that, women felt taken advantage of and traumatized. And with the help of the All Roots group, we started this, and we have a steadfast rule: no self-promotion, except for if you're an albergue owner on the Camino, because we do think it's important to support those businesses. Some people have gotten upset with this rule, and I understand that, but there are other Camino groups that allow that. So you can go to those groups, but we are a group where we don't allow any of that self-promotion. So you don't have to worry that someone's going to ask you for money to buy something. Now, this doesn't mean that our members don't offer advice like, hey, I like this book, or hey, these shoes worked for me. It's just the self-promotion part that gets a little tricky sometimes in these groups.
We're going to talk about some of the more specific hazards or scams or issues. Before we do, I feel like at least once a week, you see someone pop into a Facebook group, often a woman, and come in and say, I want to walk the Camino. My family's worried. Is the Camino safe? And I asked the AlertCops folks this question. I think it's just good to start broad. How do you answer that question when someone asks, is the Camino safe?
Absolutely. I love walking the Camino. The first Camino I ever did, I walked it alone. Well, except for the pilgrims that you meet along the way, of course. And it was a fabulous experience. I loved it. And I just walked a bit of the Portuguese Camino on my own. And I wouldn't have it any other way sometimes. Yes, I walk with a partner, and I like that too. But I like being able to do both. And why not? It's safe. However, just like anywhere, there are things that we have to be aware of. And information is good. Information is neutral. It's not fear-mongering. It's not bad-mouthing the Camino. I would never do that. I just want to provide information, and that's what I do. How people interpret that is another story. And as you know, people hear what they want to hear sometimes. So it's an important balance. And with information, you can make informed decisions. Nothing more than that.
It's challenging for us to hold these two things together, that something is objectively safe. But on the flip side, it's statistically possible for a plane to crash and just wildly implausible that it would ever happen to us. But these two things are true, that it's safe, but there's always some risk factor the moment you walk out your front door.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And as we'll get to later, there are things that women have to be aware of on the Camino, and, doing things to prepare ourselves to feel safer. There's nothing wrong with that. And that isn't fear-mongering. It's just having information. And yes, we've seen an uptick in the last decade of people talking about the incidents that are happening on the Camino, the sexual harassment and things like that. So it's just important to be aware. Has it deterred me? No, of course not. I'm going to keep walking my Caminos, walking them solo sometimes, and enjoying what the Camino brings to me. So it is a balance. And again, getting the information out there is important, and not ignoring it, but also just saying, here, these are things that you can do. Why not? Since when does, a problem happen and we say, oh, let's just ignore it. That'll fix it. We don't do that with things, hopefully. And so it shouldn't be any different here, right?
Yep. All right, let's talk about some of the hazards, and start with the hazards that we might encounter at home before we set forth on the Camino, the kinds of things that we need to be attentive to. You mentioned that there was this very visible, very public scam that blew up
Mhm.
Is it a year ago now?
Yeah.
It's been a little while. Maybe we shouldn't name names specifically,
No, we
but
won't do that.
but can you talk about kind of what happened and why this was such a big deal?
Yes, it was last April, and it was this person who had started this group who had never walked Camino, actually, and started contacting podcasters and telling a story about wanting to help women 50 plus walk the Camino and starting this fund that would be used to help other women walk the Camino. So if somebody needed shoes or if somebody needed a hotel. However, there were many red flags. The first being you had to donate in order to be able to then compete to receive funds for shoes, for example. In the US, that's called pay to play, and it's illegal. This person wasn't from the US, so not sure, but we did some investigating, and it turns out it was not the most legal thing where they're from either. And in the end, this person ended up taking all the funds for themselves, ended up putting together a book of other women's stories about the Camino, had women sign a contract where she got 50% of all the proceeds of the sales, plus 50% of this fund that she created for managing this Facebook group and all of her hard work. Well, many of us manage Facebook groups as volunteers. We don't charge. And I say we because it wasn't me, it was a group of us that kept commenting. Our comments were deleted. Eventually, I was removed from the group, and many of us were. And so I developed a chat and I said, okay, who's with me? We need to investigate this. I'm a researcher by training, so this was up my alley. And I began just writing a report about what was going on because it's not such an easy thing to explain because this person is very charismatic. And like all scammers, scammers are charismatic people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to have you give them money, right? Scammers are not mean. They're not ogres. They can come off as very charismatic. And that's the point, right? This person was this way and attracted a lot of loyal followers in this group. The group still exists because Facebook is not very good at taking complaints seriously and doing something about them. So unfortunately, it's still there. But I do warn people in my group, in our group, we have wonderful moderators and other admins who work hard to make our group safe and to bring attention to some of the issues. So that's probably more than you wanted to know. But in the end, this person took all the money for themselves and started a Camino, did about 10 days, quit, said they needed to process in a vacation spot, and end of story.
So I've never told this story before, but I got the same promotional email and request for podcast interview that I suspect every other Camino podcast got. And I know that she ended up on at least a couple of podcasts. I generally, when I get those emails, I send a polite no thank you and move on. That's just not the way that I work. And I also know that if I'm getting the email, everybody else is. And so they'll probably end up on a different pod and probably faster than when I do it. But like a lot of people, I saw the cause, thought the cause was important, thought this could be a chance to do something different. So I talked to two of my old students. I walk with students on the Camino, two young women. I asked if they would be interested in talking with her. And then also I said, as part of it, I said, I'd like for you to bring in at least two of the other women whose stories are featured in your book, so we can have kind of a roundtable conversation about this. Well, my students showed up for the conversation. This woman showed up, did not bring any of the other women who were featured in the book, had never walked a Camino, so she didn't have much to say about it. Neither of my students felt good about the experience. They felt kind of icky. I felt bad about it, immediately put the interview on ice, didn't want to do anything with it. And then a week later, it all blew up. So score one for being slow. But also, again, it speaks to the point you're making, which is a scam artist knows how to take advantage of well-intentioned people. That's the hard part here, is that when we hear a really compelling sob story, on one hand, it's fair to be moved by it. And on the other hand, we have to be at least a little suspicious.
Yeah. And, there were plenty of red flags that I then summarized. And I actually had a post in her group and I'd ask questions and it was a back and forth about, no, I didn't say that. And then I said, well, I happen to have the screenshot, because as a researcher, I just wanted to make sure I had my information correct. And so I did that before they were deleted. If she's listening, she knows now. So, no gaslighting allowed. Enough women started chiming in. And like I said, it wasn't just me. A number of women became aware. But unfortunately, she had her people who she had already convinced. And sometimes when these scams happen, look, it's not that people aren't smart. Anyone can be taken by a scam.
Yep.
But when it happens to you, you feel maybe shame. And so you don't want to talk about it. Or maybe you feel such shame that you continue believing the person because it feels really bad to not believe them. And you feel like, wow, I really was duped. And to admit that kind of can feel bad to, we're just humans. But I want to say that if you have been scammed, if something has happened to you like this, it's not your fault. These people are really good. If you can let it be known, if you can work through that feeling of guilt or shame, you are supported. You're not alone. It happens. And it's not that you're not intelligent. It happens to anybody. And so that's an important message to get out there as well. It makes people feel comfortable in talking about their experience and knowing that they aren't alone.
Yep. So you've created a Facebook group so that there will be a safe and secure place for these things to happen. But there are a lot of Camino Facebook groups out there, and they're not all legitimate. What are the issues that you are seeing around these kinds of Facebook groups?
Yes, these groups, in order to figure out if they are legit, look at the admins and look at the moderators. What are their names? Are they posting things for sale? So in a lot of these groups, the admins, will be somebody's name and it'll say admin under it. And they're posting t-shirts for sale or other merchandise. A big one is quilts, and it'll say, please rate my autistic child's design. It will help them feel good about themselves. And then it'll offer it for sale. This is a very common one, whether it's a shirt or whether it's a quilt. A couple of the designs, I actually went back and researched them and found that they were real designs by people who work hard, who are artists, who made these Camino designs. And they were stealing them and putting them for sale on theirs. And I doubt that anybody who buys these things actually gets an item. They also may be stealing credit card information. I don't know that, but it's plausible enough. And so do not buy anything from these sites. And first of all, be able to know what is a fake site. And if you are a member, please leave. Because what happens is the more people that join, the more legitimate these groups seem. And they can also then, if they get a lot of members, they can sell these sites to others who start using them for sales. And so it's a business for them. They will post pictures of, an account will say, yeah, I just started my Camino. I'm in Porto, and it's a family of 5. And then the next day, the same account will say, I've arrived in Santiago, and it's, a single woman in the picture. So they steal pilgrims' pictures and use them for these groups to appear legitimate. And if the admin is selling you a quilt or a t-shirt or a mug, leave the group. That is not a legitimate group. They are not there to help you. And some of these groups are quite large. It's alarming. There are some groups with 35,000, 40,000 members.
Yeah.
And when I've told some people, and I have kind of a copy paste in Spanish and English saying how to identify and why it's a fake group, some people will thank me. Other people will be like, well, how do you know? And I said, I just told you how I know, but because they don't want to believe it. And I understand that. You don't want to believe that these groups are fake.
Yep.
And here's another thing. You don't need to join 30 Facebook groups about the Camino. You don't. Trust me. The more groups you join, the more likely that you are going to run into one of these fake groups.
Yep.
Join established groups where the admins and moderators are people that have walked the Camino, that give you valuable information. That might take a little bit more of investigation on your part, but it's well worth it. Admins are people who will post information that helps pilgrims. They will not post things for sale. And if you look into the group, in the end, you're going to get useful information, right? And so that's what we want. That's what you want. So it's worth your time to investigate the group that you're going to join before you actually join it, because they may come up in your feed all the time and it's a useless group. Why not just be a member of a legitimate group that can help you?
And one of the related pieces that I think everyone needs to be mindful there is, even if you are only a member of legitimate groups, there are still people out there who are looking to harvest the photos you post, the writing you post. All of that is being repurposed in some of these illegitimate groups.
Yes, true. So you maybe want to look at some private groups that have moderators and admins that are quick to remove spam and the like. In my group and in the big All Roots group, there are hardworking moderators and admins who are constantly getting responses from members. Hey, this could be a scam. Is it or not? And we'll investigate and decide if it is, and we'll remove it. And so we've also cultivated that in those groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the members. We don't see everything. It depends on the members to report things. But if you cultivate that kind of culture within your group, they will help you. The pilgrims want a safer environment. They don't want to be spammed. And so it's important that you join a group that has created that kind of Camino online culture.
So there are landmines to watch out for on Facebook. The same is true on Amazon. I've taken note of this recently. The number of high-selling, best-selling Camino books that, I can't say it for a fact, but they certainly look like they're AI books, is stunningly high. Like, it's alarming to see just how many AI books with AI reviews are out there. So what should pilgrims be aware of in that regard?
If you see an author and you look, sometimes they put about author, if you look for other books that they've written, in the last month, they've written a book about the Camino. They've written a book about Germany. They've written a book about Disneyland or whatever. Red flag, people, red flag. That's not a real author. Another thing, like you said, is that they have created fake accounts to give positive reviews. So be aware. Once you've established yourself to be in a legitimate group, ask people in that group. Ask the admins, ask the moderators. I always say that in my group. Please ask me if you have a book that you're thinking about buying, ask. And I will go, I will see, I'll look for the red flags. And I occasionally do that too. I will post, here's a list of books. These, do not buy these. These are AI books. We ban those profiles in our group. I let other legitimate groups know, hey, these profiles are fake and you might want to get them out of your group. And in our group, it's so fast. If one of these AI books shows up, our members are reporting very quickly because we've created that. They know that they are helping to keep the space safer for all the pilgrims in it. It is quite alarming, and legitimate writers, it puts them in a bad place because their books that they've really worked hard to write stories or give information, they're being bypassed for these fake books that are disorganized. They are just garbage in, garbage out, and you waste your money.
Yep.
And so ask in your legitimate groups, hey, came across this. Is it something that I should purchase?
Are there any other common hazards that you've taken note of that we need to be on the lookout for at home?
The hard part is that new things keep happening. And so now we're finding, even though we have the controls in our group, bots are getting around, they're answering the questions and getting in. And so we see them and they're out. So they're getting more sophisticated. This isn't to have people throw in the towel, not at all. But in the groups where you have good admins and moderators, those will be less likely, right? And so that's why I say it's really important to join well-moderated groups. We're always on the lookout for the fake accounts that come up. There are fake accounts that are created in these fake groups to like a post about a t-shirt sale. So this is the best t-shirt I've ever seen in my life. And then like, those are all bot accounts.
Yeah.
To raise the profile of that post.
God.
So be on the lookout for that. Yeah.
It's so bad. All right. Well, let's flip over then to on the Camino. So the hazards one might have to manage on the Camino, maybe not common, maybe very rare. Mm-hmm. But what are some of the issues that you see popping up the most in that regard?
Like any activity that you take on and you're traveling, stolen items. Keep an eye on your things. I ran into a person last week. They weren't walking the Camino, but they had landed in Madrid, went to pick up their coffee, turned around, and their briefcase was stolen with their passport and all their documents. So keep an eye on your items, especially as you're arriving into the first place, even before you start your Camino. When you're in the albergue, now, some places, of course, you have to take your shoes off. There's a common area for shoes and poles. This isn't on purpose, I would say, for the vast majority of people, but sometimes people get their shoes taken or something by accident. So if you want to put like a ribbon or something that makes your items distinguishable, that's a good idea. Also, there has been, not common, again, like you said, but it's happening. I don't know how much it's happening now, but there have been cases where people are acting as pilgrims and staying in albergues and stealing people's money, credit cards, and documents. So if I'm in the shower, my passport is with me in a plastic baggie if it has to be. My money's with me. My credit cards are with me. They're on my body or near me. I'll sleep with my documents and money in a bag under my pillow, for example, because there was an incident I read about a few months ago about somebody who their backpack was right next to them by the bed and they had their money and documents stolen. Now, again, that's not to fearmonger, and the vast majority of situations are not that. However, it's just important to be aware. I do that. It doesn't deter from my Camino, something that I'm like, oh, this is terrible and, I have to do this. No, okay. No big deal to slip my credit card and passport under my pillow. No big deal.
When it moves from petty theft to more physical and emotional encounters, my sense is that the rarest is actual physical assault. Also quite rare, sexual harassment certainly happens. The most common of the rare encounters, these are all unlikely things to happen, is indecent exposure. I think that's the most common thing that I see pilgrims report that would fall under this larger umbrella.
Yes. And to be clear, indecent exposure in a sort of general broad sense, and this is kind of a global definition, is unwanted sexual attention of any nature. You don't have to be touched. Mm-hmm. And it is a form of sexual assault. And it's a word that scares people, and it's a word that we don't want to use, but it is part of the definition. And so it's important to not minimize the experience and people's reactions to it, because I've seen these posts as well in the groups, and there'll be all sorts of responses like, oh, it's no big deal, to you should just laugh at them and mock them. Let me tell you, please do not do that. A safety precaution, there are whistles built into many backpacks. I also carry a whistle, and it's just not a big deal. It's a precaution. Likely nothing's going to happen. But there actually was a situation in which I was walking the Portuguese with some people. We heard an alarm go off and wondered what it was. We later found out that a woman had been followed and a man exhibited himself to her. And, she had a personal alarm that she set off and he left. So again, it's an experience that for some people it may not be a big deal, but it is a form of sexual assault. And if you can, please report it, because we're also finding that there are people in certain areas, and these are people who are, we'll say, repeat offenders, because there was a case recently where a woman talked about what happened to her and she posted it. Well, under that post, another person said, "Oh, wow, that happened to me too. I didn't report it, but good on you for reporting it." And so we shouldn't shame women who don't feel comfortable reporting. We should support these women. There are various reasons why women might not report. It might be they don't know how to do it in this country. They feel like, I'm just going to forget about it and go on my Camino. Any number of reasons. So what we can do is we can tell women, okay, if something like this happens to you, the first thing you need to do is get away to a safe spot. Find other pilgrims that may be around you. Mark your location where it happened if you can do that, because for some women, it may take a moment for them. They're experiencing a really bad moment for some people. Any descriptors that you have of the person, the time where this occurred, if you feel like you can, call the authorities and report it. Use the AlertCops app on your phone. Install that before you start your Camino. It's just a good safety thing to have. We have apps for walking the Camino. Add this AlertCops app. And they do speak English as well. So those are the two most important things, are to get away. And if you can, please report it, because we may find that it's the same person. And if you get rid of this one person, you've actually lowered this rate by a lot, because it's that it could be that it's, one or a couple of people in a particular area. And do not mock the person. I've seen that response. Oh, just laugh at them, make fun of them. You don't know this person's state of mind. You don't know if they are going to snap. You don't know anything about them. They do this because they want some form of attention, and you just never know. So the first thing is to just get away to a safe spot and think about your own safety.
And part of the power of the AlertCops app, and this comes up in my conversation with the folks from that organization, is that the app will automatically pin your location. So you don't have to try to remember exactly where you were. It will identify that spot, and often that spot is chosen quite deliberately by the person engaging in this bad behavior. Maybe it's a little isolated, they have a little bit more cover, easier for them to get to and from their car, maybe. There might be a variety of reasons, but being able to really target that location is important. And then the other thing that I think is important for people to recognize is you're not required to put your real name in AlertCops. So if you are reticent to get involved in the legal process in a foreign country, or for whatever reason, you don't have to feel like you are getting stuck, that you're getting sucked into that.
Yeah.
What you are doing is reporting to hopefully reduce the risk of this happening to someone else.
Yes. And that's important. And so people should just feel supported in this process is the number one thing. And again, encourage to report, but don't also make someone feel guilty and pressure them to report if they are not feeling in that moment that they can do that. Because what happens with any form of sexual assault is that in that moment, your control is being taken away from you, right? And so if you can continue to take that power away from somebody, it just feels like a horrible situation to them. So the number one thing we can do is to say, hey, how can I help you? How can I help you? Don't assume, don't say you have to report this right now. That is great because it does help other people not experience that. But let's try to help support women who've experienced this and to ask, what do you need me to do? How can I help you? And put it back into their hands and let them have that control back. Knowing what's going on is really important. So I actually started keeping a spreadsheet. I'm an ethnographer. I know how to collect data. And so once I've seen a story, I then in the spreadsheet, without identifying by name, put the stories that come after that, like, oh, this happened to me. And then I cross-check those in other groups to make sure that I'm not double counting an experience so it sounds like, more than what it is. And even with that, I've seen one story generate 10, 15 responses where, oh yeah, something like that happened to me too.
Mm.
So again, the Camino is safe. This isn't about fear mongering, but it is about letting people know what's going on and having a good way of collecting that information, because there will be women who don't report. So just because you look up police reports about harassment and sexual assault on the Camino and you don't see very many, it doesn't mean that it's not happening.
Yeah.
It could mean that people are not reporting them. I've seen these posts in the comments where a number of women say, oh, I just didn't report it. Oh, I just didn't report it. Right now, the reports that seem to be happening, as you stated, are men exposing themselves on the Camino. This is unwanted sexual attention. But we also don't know if that could escalate, because there is some research and some suggestion that those kinds of behaviors, can escalate. So it's not just that it's a harmless act.
You mentioned you'll see people, pilgrims, well-intentioned, sometimes giving bad responses to these kinds of topics. One of the most common missteps that I see is when those well-intentioned pilgrims say, well, just don't walk alone. And that's the way to mitigate this risk, right? That if you're walking with other people, then you don't have to worry about this stuff. That's not the answer, right?
That's not the answer.
So what, in your view, are the practical moves people can make to mitigate or manage this kind of situation? Obviously, AlertCops have it on your phone. That's a response, though, right? Like you do that after it's already happened. Yeah. Are there other practical steps people can take that won't rob the Camino of what makes it so good?
Yeah, I think like when I walk, I'm just aware. And unfortunately, women are aware in the ways that men might not be. Not that this doesn't happen to men, but in the constant everyday way in which, walking through a dark parking lot, a parking garage at night, you're aware. Not to equate these things, but, I have a whistle. I have my walking poles. Another reason I use walking poles, they can inflict damage. I let people know where I am. I share my location, no skin off my nose, and I enjoy my Camino. I'm alone. I'm enjoying nature, enjoying other pilgrims who may walk by, and I don't let it take over. But I feel empowered. I have the information that I need. I know what to do in case, unfortunately, something might happen. Not that I'm thinking about it constantly, but just that awareness. It's not robbing me of my Camino. I continue to walk alone. I continue to enjoy the space and, in the unlikely event that something happens, I have the information that I need. And I think this is what's important. Give people information to make informed decisions. As I said before, since when do we say if we ignore an issue, it'll go away? We don't. So we just hit it head on. I'm a researcher. This is, what I do. Let me find out what's happening. Let me let the right people know. And let's help, stop it and make the Camino a safer, even safer space for everyone, right? So everyone can have an enjoyable experience. And why not, if we see a problem, why not deal with it?
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for taking that righteous indignation and translating it into action, because I do think it's made a very positive mark and has helped make the Camino just a little bit safer for everyone involved.
Thank you. And I just want to emphasize that it does take a village. I have great admins and moderators in my group. Other pilgrims who join are looking after each other, reporting scammers, and that's how we do it. There's no one person who is in this alone. We are all helping each other. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving me the time, and I hope it helps people be informed.
David Mumford, awesome to be able to talk with you. I have heard your voice now for 100 episodes, as have everyone else listening. So
Right.
Take me back to the beginning. What got you started as a singer-songwriter?
Oh, goodness, what got me started? Probably my dad dropping off a guitar in my room at age 13 and saying, "On you go, son. Go on, write some songs. I'm off for a beer." That was probably the start. I don't really know. It's a funny thing, music, isn't it? I notice with my kids, it's like one of them's into it and the other one isn't. And it doesn't seem, I haven't done anything different as far as I can tell. So I don't know. It's a weird thing. I always just wanted to be able to sing my own songs and write my own music. But I don't know where that came from. But I mean, that was age 13. I didn't actually start doing it until, goodness, probably 25 or so. I mean, I'm 40. What am I now? 41. Probably 25. Started actually writing songs. And the song that you're using for the start of the episode, I think that was written maybe around that time.
Wow.
It's probably around that time. It was probably a good 16, 17 years ago. Recorded it and yeah, I released it, as it were, in I'm going to say 2013.
Okay.
So that's 12 years old officially, that song.
It's making its way through the world for sure.
Yeah.
Is there a moment from your career that stands out to you as kind of the defining, like, yes, I am doing this, I'm a musician, this is working?
That's a funny one because I guess I made the decision a while ago. So before this song came out. So this song came out 2013. That was my first album. And before that point, I decided I wasn't going to ask my music, my art, to pay any of my bills. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just made that decision. I just wasn't going to treat it as like I have to do this to suffer and struggle to earn money. I just thought I'm going to treat this as I'm going to use whatever extra time I have in my life beyond a day job to spend on this music thing and try to just enjoy it as much as I can without that added thing of making it earn me money. So that was a curious decision, and I struggle to explain that to people, really, especially to musicians I know who are doing it full time. And there's not many of those, actually. Even my heroes, like folk heroes who I vaguely know, who have got, thousands of fans and do gigs all the time. Most of those, I would say, still do day jobs.
Mhm.
So I was kind of looking at that 20 years ago, thinking, yeah, you know what, all my heroes, they're still having to work as well. I think that's going to be the thing I'm going to have to do as well. But I'm pleased that I did that because it meant that, I don't know, I can just write these songs, record them, and I'm done with them. Musicians are notoriously bad at promoting and doing all the marketing and what have you. So that was good. I was like, yeah, I'm bad at that too. I don't have to do that anymore because I'm not asking this to earn any money. So in terms of, to your question, the best point, I did a couple of not big gigs as such, but like festival gigs around my neck of the woods in the southeast. I did, in fact, I played at the Americana Festival round near me, and I supported people like Joan Armour Trading and Tim Burgess and the Dylan Project. So I had fun. I've had fun with it, but now it's really very much a part-time thing. I like performing covers mainly. I still do like the cover gigs in restaurants and things, but my own music, I like to record it in secret and just send it out into the universe, put it up on Spotify and YouTube, give it the proper Viking burial, send it out to sea on a raft, flaming arrow, done with it. That's the end of it. I'm not playing those songs anymore. So this song, for example, I haven't played in 10 years.
Wow.
I played it this morning, actually. I got the guitar out and played it this morning to try and remind myself how it goes. It's not a bad song, is it? It's not bad. It's all right.
It's catchy. It's a funny thing. I have people all the time reference, when they hear the chimes, they're in a good mood, that it puts them in the right mindset. They're excited for an episode. And yeah, it really draws them in. Was there a particular inspiration behind that song? Can you even remember at this point kind of what brought that into your head?
Yes, I think I can. And I think there's actually a spooky connection to what you're doing with your pilgrimage podcast. I was playing around with a song by John Martin called May You Never, which you might know. Drop D, very kind of like with the slaps and the rhythm was similar. And I think that's where my song came from. I think I stole it from John Martin. But at the time, I was living in a house in the countryside just 10 miles south of the Pilgrim's Way.
Yeah.
Do you know the Pilgrim's Way? You've talked about that before.
Yeah.
So that was where we were. We were in a village called Rudgwick near Horsham. And I mean, at the time, I didn't know the Pilgrim's Way was there. It's only more recent than that I worked it out. But there was the point being there was loads of countryside out the back of my house stretching off to the middle of nowhere. And obviously in the UK, you're never that far away from anything. You get parachuted into any part of the UK and you'll be fine. Do you know what I mean? You walk for 3 hours, you'll find something wherever you are, a road or a person or something. But there was beautiful countryside there, which we used to go out walking in all the time. And yeah, that kind of countryside, the UK landscape, getting properly out into the countryside away from towns. It's always been something that's just done something for me. I can't explain it, but there's some kind of relief that happens. There's some kind of anxiety radar that quietens down for a period of time when I get out to like the Lake District or Devon or somewhere like that. But yeah, it's funny, that song was written barely 10 miles from the Pilgrim's Way, 120-mile walking route from Winchester to Canterbury, I think it is.
Yeah.
Like probably 15 centuries old. And then you listen to it and use it for your thing. And now I'm talking to you. It's funny how it works. Eh?
I think there are a lot of people listening right now who are having this sudden realization that wait, he's English? It's a funny thing how accent does or doesn't come through in song.
Yeah, I guess I sing a bit Americanized. We all do over here in the UK. You know, we're all very snobby about UK music and UK musicians, but we all try and sound American, eh? That's just how it goes.
Would you say that this song, Walking in the Country, is kind of representative of your current style as a musician? Like if people go and dive into your other works, is it going to be consistent with this or has it shifted over time?
I think it's probably shifted, eh? This song was from an album of similar songs about the countryside, kind of boyhood to manhood stuff. It was called Bonfire Music. So it's all that kind of idea, you know, sitting around out in the countryside next to a big fire. More recently, I did an album of songs for my children, which was more introspective, I suppose, and just had more, I guess, about more specific things that were going on in my life. I think different kind of sound. So yeah, I think people would notice a difference. I think, although you could probably still tell it's me.
What are the best places for people to find your music? You mentioned Spotify and YouTube. Is that the best? I ask sometimes authors, where's the best place to buy your book? The models are constantly shifting these days. So from a musician's perspective, how can people best support you?
I don't know. I put everything up on Spotify just because I just think, I don't know, there's no money in music. I'm, it's like sometimes someone sends me a couple of quid on Bandcamp, which is great. But fundamentally, I just want, if people listen to these songs and are in some small way made happy by them, then that's cool. And so Spotify, YouTube, wherever, the standard places. But it's super fun when I stumble across things like you've done. So every 6 months or so, I'll go onto YouTube and do a 6-month history search of my name just to check what people have been up to. And there's all kinds, because I put all these songs out from the first album onto the Free Music Archive, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All kinds of people have found them from all over the place and used them for all manner of bizarre things. There's a guy who's traveling around the world with his family on a yacht for the past however many years who's been using my songs, which is great. So I've had a chat with him. Someone used one of my songs for an advert for a stick they made to take pips out of pomegranates. So someone in Brazil has used it for walking through the forest videos and making things out of mud. There's all manner of strange things that it pops up, which is fantastic. I love the idea of these songs going out into the universe and finding new adventures, with different people. And that's cool. It's kind of exciting for me. So yeah, I would say to people, just go wherever and enjoy them if you want to. YouTube, Spotify, wherever.
I can't thank you enough for putting it out there. When I was getting this started, I had no idea what I was doing. I think I went to a life hacker, how to make a podcast article, and I just followed the steps and found a royalty-free music place to try to find a song. And I thought, this is going to take me forever. How am I ever going to find something usable? And then I found your song and it was a perfect fit. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And there's always that part of me in the back of my head that's thinking like, I've acknowledged the song, but does the musician seriously approve of his song being repurposed in this way? Is this really a legitimate thing that I'm doing? And it's heartening to know that it is something that's satisfying to you. So I'm glad to hear that. And I want you to know again that the most common message I get from people has nothing to do with me. It is about you. It is about who is the musician, who wrote that song. A lot of people have asked that over the years.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's nice to hear, eh? Yeah. If people enjoy it, then that's basically the reason why I make songs, you know? I would make them anyway, even if no one ever listened to them, but it's nice. It's an added bonus, isn't it?
That's exactly how I feel about the podcast. I do it for myself, but the cool thing over the years is that people actually listen to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever been to the UK and done any of the pilgrimages here, the old routes?
I've walked the North Downs way. So yeah, the Pilgrim Road to Canterbury. It was a number of years ago. So I need to get back and spend some more time walking because there has been this remarkable resurgence of pilgrim roads across the UK. I mean, it's been a massive effort by the Pilgrimage Trust to bring back a lot of the old ways.
Oh, really? Because I know that we are probably quite unusual in a sense in Europe, at least, for having what are they called? Public footpaths and public bridleways, public rights of way that are ancient and no one can mess with. No housing developers or no one else can mess with those. And they sometimes go through farms and people's properties. And so that is an ancient tradition here. And yeah, with things like the Pilgrim's Way, and there's others, of course, that are ancient and they're spectacular. You look at pictures of some of these places. We've got where we live in Brighton, the South Downs Way. So the Pilgrim's Way is the North Downs Way, I suppose, or they're connected at least.
Yeah.
But where we are is the South Downs Way. And now I think it's roughly the same distance. I don't actually know how far it goes. I think it might be towards Winchester again to the west and somewhere out east. And I don't know the history of it, but you walk along it. You can walk along it for weeks, you know, and it's beautiful. It's all up on the top of the hill. So you're seeing amazing views either side, to the sea on one side and out into the countryside. And yeah, more people should get out and do it. I know I should with the kids, you know, take my own advice and actually get out and walk it. When were you last here then? When did you last go on that?
Gosh, wow. I'm trying to do the math in my head. It might actually be 20 years since I walked to Canterbury.
Right. Yeah.
That's wild. It's been a long time. So yeah, I've ended up more in Europe, in France, Spain, Italy for walking. But yeah, I got to get back to England at some point.
Lots of history here, mate. Well, in Europe too, but yeah, here it's like centuries and centuries along those routes. And the Roman roads as well.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for your song and for taking some time to talk with me here today. And yeah, I think people will be really excited to hear from you. So thanks for making the time.
To make sure I'm not an interloper, do you want me to prove to you that that is my song?
Dude, yeah.
I can probably remember the first verse. That's
all right.
As much as I've got. And I think it was something like, I think it was quite high. See, I'm singing a lot lower now than I used to, of course. I think it was up there. I've been walking in the country. I've been chasing after my shadow. Nobody asked me my name. Baby, my baby will never see me again. I hold on to life in the palm of my hand. I think God must really love this land. I know heaven above can't stop me. Darling, I'm walking around. Yeah. Something like that, isn't it?
There are two stories I want to share from my own experiences on the Camino that fall under the broader safety and security umbrella. The only two experiences I've had where things could have gone wrong. And if we tend to focus more on the relationship between safety and women on the Camino, here's stories where I think there's some lessons for men to take. The first time occurred with my second student group on the Camino Francés. We were in Estella, and I was sitting at an outdoor table in the Plaza de los Fueros with one of my co-leaders and a few of the students. As we were preparing to leave, a middle-aged Spaniard, obviously inebriated, came up to me, very close to me. I don't know what triggered it. Maybe it's my RBF. But he was suddenly very interested in engaging with me. On the surface, he sounded friendly, jocular, but there was a tangible current of potential violence churning beneath that. It was clear. I tried unsuccessfully to pull myself away from the conversation a couple of times. Finally, again, with my students all looking on, he sized me up and said, "Are you a strong man, David?" And without hesitation, I said no. I am not a strong man at all. And with that, the situation de-escalated abruptly. He moved on and we walked back to the albergue. My colleague was impressed with me. Here's the second story. I was walking with a different student group out of León. It was one of those mornings where pilgrims are starting their day as crowds of Spaniards are stumbling out of the discotecas at the end of theirs. And as we walked along a track through the country, we came across a group of Spanish men who were also very well lubricated. I happened to be with some of the guys in my group, and we passed without incident. But the Spaniards were suddenly quite attentive to the girls in my group, who came a little behind us, walking with my female colleague. I immediately turned back, feeling some urgency to be on hand just in case. The leader of that group interpreted my presence as a challenge, and he turned on me. For whatever reason, he had a metal pipe in his hand. I remember staring at that pipe, monitoring its every movement. Ultimately, we arrived at a detente and the sides separated and moved on. That afternoon, some other pilgrims at the albergue excitedly waved me over. They had seen the altercation from a distance, were fearful for us, and called the police. I guess the police showed up later and had some sort of conversation with the partiers. The pilgrims were quite complimentary of my approach to the situation. My colleague, however, was livid. Livid. She said that the men would have walked past. Maybe they would have said some annoying stuff, but it would have been in Spanish, so most of the group wouldn't have understood a word of it. She had it under control. But when I inserted myself in the situation, it immediately elevated matters. Unlike in Estella, where I completely rebuffed any sort of machismo-tinged showdown, I played into it outside of León. That was a painful thing to hear. I'm still ambivalent about what my best course of action would have been. Certainly would have been a bad look if something bad had happened and I had just been standing at a safe distance removed from all of it. But my behavior didn't show a lot of confidence in my co-leader, and I can understand her point. The lesson for me was the importance of de-escalation. When fists fly, everyone's a loser. I didn't feel like I had sacrificed some vital slice of pride by telling that dude in Estella that I am not a strong man. I was just happy to get the hell out of there. That was the best outcome for everyone. And so there are 2 points that I want to make with that story. First, to underscore the rarity of this, the unusual nature of these close calls, as these remain the only 2 such encounters in more than 20 years of pilgrimage. Second, as with installing AlertCops or some of the different advice offered by Rebecca, once again, what's clear is that we have some agency here. We have the capacity to take actions that can make us even safer. That's all for this episode. Thanks again to Andrea Parraga Penalver and Juan Manuel Aragon Garcia. You can find the AlertCops app at the Apple Store and Google Play. Thanks as well to Rebecca Martinez. You can find her, if you qualify, at the Camino de Santiago Women 50 Plus All Routes group. And a special thanks to David Mumford. Find his music on Spotify, YouTube, and Bandcamp. All episodes of the Camino Podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, and YouTube. You can reach me at CaminoPodcast@gmail.com and through the Camino Podcast Facebook page. And you can support the pod on Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Whitson. Thanks for listening to the first 100.
Baby, my
Here's to
baby,
100 more.
never see me again.